Let me get him!
She was a good girl. She was quiet. She was loving. Everybody loved her, you know, and just tragedy about this domestic violence that needs to stop.
This is Charisma Smith, a 21-year-old mother of two beautiful daughters who would be found dead in the most gruesome way in her own apartment on the night of June 28, 2022. But before police arrived at that blood-soaked crime scene and before her 18-year-old brother lay bleeding on the floor with multiple gunshot wounds fighting for his life, there was a week-long manhunt.
On the day she was killed, and her 18-year-old brother was shot in their apartment. She even provided police information about where he could be staying, only police couldn't find him.
Except this wasn't the police searching for a criminal. Let me take you back to where this nightmare began, and I promise you, by the time we're done here, you'll understand exactly how a protection order, a police warrant, and multiple warning signs still weren't enough to save this young mother's life. Charisma M. Smith wasn't just another statistic. She was a vibrant, kind-hearted young woman whose life revolved around caring for others. Born around July of 2000, Charisma worked tirelessly as a home healthcare aide, spending her days providing compassionate care to elderly patients while simultaneously raising her two young daughters, Zuri and Nyasri. Friends and family remember her as someone who lit up every room she entered, whose smile was constant and genuine, whose quiet demeanor masked an incredible strength that she would desperately need in the years to come.
I spoke to Smith's family members last week. Her cousin Don Jones grieving after the loss of his cousin.
She had to move. She was a good girl. She was quiet. She was loving. Everybody loved her, you know, and just tragedy about this domestic violence that needs to stop.
She was the devoted daughter of Mahogany Gaddis, a loving sister to her siblings, and above all, a mother who referred to her children as her greatest gifts. The kind of woman who put everyone else's needs before her own and would try to see the good in people, even when they showed her nothing but darkness. But behind that beautiful smile was a young woman trapped in a living nightmare that began when she was just a child herself. It was 2016. Charisma was only 16 years old when she met Michael C. Brantley, a man who was approximately 39 or 40 years old at the time. But it gets worse, because Brantley deliberately lied about his age to Charisma's mother, Mahogany Gaddis. He knew exactly what he was doing. He knew that if he revealed his true age, no responsible parent would allow their teenage daughter anywhere near him. So he deceived them and manipulated his way into this child's life, and by the time the truth came out, it was already too late. Charisma was 17 years old and pregnant with their first child. Think about that timeline for a second. This was grooming, an outright predatory behavior disguised as romance, and it set the stage for 6 years of absolute hell. Brantley moved into Charisma's first apartment, and what should have been an exciting time for a young woman experiencing independence became a prison. Family members didn't just suspect abuse, they witnessed it. They saw the text messages, berating texts that Brantley would send, tearing down this young woman's self-esteem word by word. They heard the verbal abuse, the way he would speak to her, the way he would control every aspect of her life. Charisma confided in her mother about her growing fear and hatred of this man. She told Mahogany outright she hated him. She was terrified of him. But still, she stayed. Her family begged her to leave, urged her to walk away from this toxic, dangerous relationship, but leaving an abuser isn't as simple as packing a bag and walking out the door. Tragic case upon case has shown us that the most dangerous time for a domestic violence victim is when they try to leave. That's when abusers escalate and become desperate to reassert control, and that's exactly what happened here. After enduring years of torment, after bringing a second daughter into this nightmare, Charisma finally found the courage to do what seemed impossible. Around 2021, approximately a year before her death, she ended the relationship and moved out of their shared apartment in Mattydale, New York. She took the steps that everyone told her to take. She didn't just leave quietly and hope for the best. No, she obtained an order of protection against Brantley, a legal document that clearly stated he was to have no contact with her whatsoever. For a brief moment, it must have felt like freedom, like maybe, just maybe, she and her daughters could finally live in peace. But Michael Brantley wasn't done with her, not even close.
Smith had an order of protection against her ex, and before he murdered her, he violated that order.
If you thought a court order and physical distance would stop a man like Michael Brantley, you don't understand the mind of an abuser. Because to someone like him, that order of protection wasn't a legal boundary, it was a challenge. The harassment began immediately after the breakup. Brantley sent threatening messages, violating the protection order repeatedly, tearing down Charisma's hard-won freedom into a different kind of prison. One where she constantly looked over her shoulder, where every notification on her phone could be another threat, where sleep became difficult because she never knew when he might show up. She reported these violations. She did everything right and went through the proper channels, told the authorities exactly what was happening, and provided evidence of his harassment. And on June 28, 2022, the same day he would ultimately take her life, an arrest warrant was finally issued for Brantley for violating that protection order. But here's the thing about arrest warrants. They only work if someone actually arrests the person. And Brantley remained free, walking the streets, hunting for his prey while police searched for him. Less than 2 weeks before her murder, Charisma made one final desperate attempt to disappear. She moved to a new apartment at 8 Stone Court in the James Geddes housing development on Syracuse West Side. She deliberately withheld her new address from Brantley and told no one he might have contact with. She took every precaution a terrified woman could possibly take to vanish from the radar of the man who had tormented her for years. And for about 72 hours, she thought she'd succeeded. Then the reports started coming in. Friends reached out to Charisma with information that made her blood cold. That's right, Brantley was actively stalking the neighborhood, going door to door for over a week, showing residents Charisma's photograph and asking if they knew where she lived. Can you imagine the terror? Some residents must have found it odd, maybe some were suspicious, but how many of them knew that they were speaking to a predator? How many of them understood that the information they might casually provide could sign this woman's death warrant? For over a week, this hunt continued, and all the while, there was an active arrest warrant for him. Police were supposedly looking for him, but none of that mattered because he found her first.
Because when somebody reaching out to you with this violence, man, and y'all not doing nothing, y'all waiting till somebody die for y'all to try to do something, that's wrong. She had to move from place to place, you know, but when she got away, the guy was walking around with a picture. And asking people, do you know this girl? Do you know which house she lived in and stuff like that?
June 28, 2022, the day everything came to a head. It started around 9 o'clock in the morning. Charisma was in her kitchen preparing food for her children. She had a friend staying over, probably for safety, probably because she was terrified of being alone. And then Brantley forced his way into her apartment. Just walked right in like he had every right to be there, like that protection order was nothing more than a piece of paper. And maybe that's all it was. He didn't just walk in quietly. No, he immediately started accusing Charisma of infidelity, baseless accusations that authorities would later confirm had absolutely no merit. This is classic abuser behavior, by the way. Creating false narratives to justify their rage, projecting their own issues onto their victims, and manufacturing excuses for violence that was always going to happen regardless of the truth. He refused to leave despite Charisma's demands that he get out. She told him he wasn't supposed to be there. She reminded him about the protection order. Nothing worked. In a moment of pure panic, showing just how dire the situation had become, Charisma snapped a photo of Brantley and immediately sent it to her mother along with a text message that revealed her true feelings. "I hate this man." Then she called the police, doing exactly what she was supposed to do, reaching out to the authorities who were supposed to protect her. Police responded and came to her apartment, but by the time they arrived, Brantley had already fled. They knew Charisma had just called them because this man had violated his protection order yet again, and still, they didn't find him.
Charisma Smith in Syracuse just last week is raising new questions about whether orders of protection work and how they're enforced.
It was probably the toughest thing for Charisma to convince herself that she would be okay and would keep her kids safe. But deep down, Charisma must have known what was coming. And at approximately 11:20 p.m. on that same day, June 28, 2022, her worst nightmare became reality. Police received reports of shots fired at 8 Stone Court. When officers arrived at the scene, they found devastation. Charisma Smith had been shot once in the head. She was pronounced dead at the scene.
We're now learning police were actively looking for Charisma's 44-year-old ex-boyfriend, Michael Brantley, on the day she was killed.
These are questions that the district attorney is asking too. He wants to know what his office as well as the courts and police could have done better to prevent this from happening to someone else.
Got an order of protection and she winds up dead. There has to be some reckoning. There has to be some accountability.
District Attorney William Fitzpatrick says there are hundreds of orders of protection currently in place in Onondaga County. He says the fact that there was a warrant out for Brantley concerns him, adding he looks back at what they could have done better.
Maybe we have to look back and check our aggressiveness in seeking out people who violate orders of protection. And we need help from the judiciary.
But it wasn't just Charisma that suffered that night. Her 18-year-old brother, who was also in the apartment, had been shot multiple times, bullets tearing through his midsection and leg as he likely tried to protect his sister. Miraculously, he would survive, but he would carry the physical and emotional scars of that night for the rest of his life. And then there were the children. Charisma's 2 young daughters were present during this horror. Her 4-year-old daughter Zuri witnessed the murder, and 1-year-old Niasri, the baby, was also there, somehow unnoticed in the initial chaos, somehow physically unharmed, but forever marked by a tragedy she was too young to comprehend. Michael Brantley didn't stay to face the consequences of what he'd done. Coward that he was, he fled the scene immediately after the shooting, but he didn't get far. Hours later, he was found in his vehicle near Syracuse Hancock International Airport with a self-inflicted gunshot wound. He was transported to Upstate University Hospital, where he later died.
21-year-old Charisma Smith was murdered by her ex-boyfriend, Michael Brantley. Brantley then killed himself hours later.
And just like that, the monster who had tormented Charisma for 6 years, who had hunted her through a neighborhood like an animal, who had stolen her life and traumatized her children, was gone. No trial, justice, or answers for the family left behind to pick up the pieces. The aftermath of this tragedy reveals systemic failures that are impossible to ignore.
Maybe we have to look back and check our aggressiveness in seeking out people who violate orders of protection. And we need help from the judiciary.
Onondaga County District Attorney William Fitzpatrick publicly questioned the effectiveness of protection orders, noting that hundreds are active in the county at any given time, and while many are successful, the enforcement gaps can lead to catastrophic results. He called for a reckoning in how police, courts, and prosecutors handle violations, emphasizing the need for more aggressive pursuit of offenders. Because here's the brutal truth. An order of protection is not bulletproof. It's a piece of paper. It provides legal resources, it gives law enforcement the authority to act, but it can't physically stop a bullet. It cannot prevent a determined killer from doing what they've already decided to do. Randy Bregman, co-director of Vera House, an organization supporting domestic violence victims, described protection orders as part of a toolbox for safety, offering legal leverage and access to resources, but acknowledged they cannot prevent acts like shootings. She and Fitzpatrick both emphasized that, despite these limitations, individuals in unsafe situations should still seek such orders because they require evidence of wrongdoing and are not issued lightly. They are better than nothing.
Knife or someone coming at you with a physical assault, it can bring additional resources to help you.
We need to look at these things more carefully because you don't get an order of protection unless you've already done something wrong. A woman can't just walk into a court and say, I'm afraid of this guy.
But better than nothing wasn't enough for Charisma Smith. Mahogany Gaddis, Charisma's mother, was left to process the unthinkable. Her daughter was dead.
Let me get him!
She took custody of Zuri and Nezri, raising them alongside her own 7-year-old daughter. A GoFundMe campaign was established to cover funeral expenses and provide ongoing support for the family. But money couldn't bring Charisma back. It couldn't erase the trauma her children experienced. It couldn't answer the devastating question that haunts Mahogany to this day. What if police had arrested Brantley that morning when they responded to the intrusion? What if the warrant had been executed sooner? Would her daughter still be alive? Charisma's cousin, Dawn Jones, mourned her as a bright light whose constant smile and loving nature left an indelible mark on everyone who knew her. Her obituary highlighted her as a beloved daughter, mother, and community member, but she was more than the tragedy that ended her life. She was a survivor who tried everything to escape. She was a mother who loved her daughters more than anything. She was a young woman who deserved so much more than 21 years on this earth. This case has been memorialized in gun violence databases and continues to serve as a reminder of the pervasive threat of intimate partner violence. In 2022 alone, nearly 90,000 domestic violence cases were reported in New York State, with approximately 70% involving intimate partners. Violations of protection orders comprised 8% of domestic violence reports outside New York City, a number that's been rising. National studies show that even with protection orders, 44% of women experience violations within 18 months. And while violence may decrease for some, stalking behavior often increases the risk of severe outcomes. The system failed Charisma Smith, not because protection orders are useless, they're not, but because enforcement wasn't prioritized, because an arrest warrant took too long to execute, because somehow a man who is actively wanted by police managed to hunt down his victim, confront her twice in one day, and ultimately murder her while that warrant remained unserved. These are the gaps that need to be closed. These are the failures that cost lives. What do you think about this case? Let me know in the comments section. Click on one of the cards on your screen to see more videos like this.